Buenos días, Obispo David aquí con
Padre Nelson
y
Canon Anna.
we hope our words find you well. We are located in the chapel of our cathedral campus, and this is something of a reflection, observation, and conversation regarding our El Camino de la Pascua. As we trust you know, during the months of April and May, we walked and we also drove 1,100 miles throughout EDSJ. We went to places of crucifixion, Good Friday, and went to places of Easter, resurrection. And in those places, we experienced some systems and structures by our own making where we've been complicit, creating situations where people have been oppressed and abused, and where, in particular, marginalized people have been harmed. And so we did reckoning work in those places. Conversely, moreover, we went to, as we know, places of hope, where we heard extraordinary stories of people endeavoring to change the world in which they live. And those are the people we want to partner, with whom we want to partner, and to also endeavor to make a difference. For me, you two, rather than naming a particular stop as poignant and as stunning and memorable as they all were, I want to say the evenings provided great memories for me. We received hospitality, as Kiwis would call nakitanga, every evening. And invariably we would stay with a faith community and we would share stories from the road from that particular day. Equally, I would say, hearing caminantes, participants, close by and far away, share some of their observations and stories. It was really magic, I thought. One particular recounting I want to share is our evening at St. Anne's, Stockton, where we had spent the day earlier, if I have it right, at St. John's as well. And we're sitting around receiving hospitality, lovely food, drink, conversation. And St. Anne's Episcopalians are talking about their engagement with the elementary school, which is located across the street. And a number of years ago, someone from our Episcopal faith community walked across the street, started a conversation, and discovered that the need for reading recovery was so desperately needed. So they asked the question, they sought out, and they asked, is there anything that we can do? So all these years later, St. Anne's been engaging in that really important piece of work. Many of the students, language English is second language, and so this was really necessitated work. Lovely ministry. And earlier in the day, as I suggested, as you both recall, we spent time at St. John's, which is the city center of Stockton, and we heard from Deacon Steve Bentley about All Things Hub, helping urban bicyclists and that work, and other sort of associated work with that ministry. And what I said that evening in our conversation was, these are two instances, and we heard story after story, of people deciding to go out and to engage with others, many of whom they'd never met, and to hear their stories, to ask important questions, and then to discern and decide, what can we do to make a difference? That's the evolution of those two resurrection stories, those two wonderful Easter stories in Stockton. And what I remember saying, and you two remember this because you remember everything I say, that we don't have to look very far where we are to hear those voices and to make decisions ourselves on how we can make a difference. For me, and I suspect for most caminantes, those experiences will be those rich experiences that we take with us for years to come, and that reminder that we can indeed make a difference, and hope springs into something extraordinary. What about you?
There is still so much about the Camino that I'm processing. It was certainly a challenge to go into those places of crucifixion, which made the places of resurrection all that more important, because that's where you see a moment in time where things have not gone well. And then, as you were saying about both of our congregations in Stockton, they saw a need, they addressed the need, and now they're working in resurrection time. So there is always hope. You know, we don't have to get stuck on Good Friday. And for me, that was most illuminated in Grayson when we went to the Unity Community Center and heard the story of the 1999 tire fire. We heard stories of how they are one of the few communities in the state of California that has a garbage incinerator. And I think he said they were burning like 8 billion tons of garbage a day. I mean, all these pollutants that, I mean, they're bad enough as it is, but then it gets into our air and our water and our soil, and that becomes our food. And so there's that environmental impact, but they were also intentionally set up to put those toxic places into this community because they are low income, Hispanic, Latino communities, often undocumented folks are there. Half their population is children, so they can't vote to change the way things are being done in their town. And yet a few concerned citizens stayed the course, and they persevered, and, you know, they got the attention of legislators and others in power to begin to shift the dynamic in their community and to build this community service center that provides after-school tutoring and wellness care for seniors and all sorts of resources that they otherwise lacked. And it wasn't because some really noble, well-intentioned white person came to town and tried to fix it for them. It was because they were resilient within themselves. And so for me, not only is that a story of resurrection, but it's also a reminder that when we go beyond our church walls, which we should be doing all the time, that we don't have to recreate the wheel. And we don't have to necessarily fix or save a situation. What we need to do is we need to listen deeply to what's happening there and discern how we can partner and participate without diminishing the work that's already being done locally by the people it directly impacts. So that for me was just, I don't want to say it was an eye-opener, but it was a reminder. Mm-hmm. And it gave me great hope that just a small group of concerned and persevering people can make a big difference in the world.
And what a salient point is that those very few voices can transform situations. And thank you for recounting that one. We heard from John on the day, and John is one of those voices, mm-hmm. and identified, as you said so well, that this place, Grayson, has been literally a dumping ground for years, mm-hmm. in all sorts of ways. And that has impacted an already marginalized population. Mm-hmm. And they're saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
And you see those moments and stories of resurrection and hope emerging from that. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
En mi caso, uno de los momentos más impactantes fue cuando fuimos a McFarland, al centro de detención de ICE. En primera medida, pues llegar allá al centro de detención, ver los muros, ver gente que está detenida, es chocante. Pero luego también escuchar a través de llamada telefónica testimonios de personas que han estado adentro. Y con el padre Tony ofrecer nuestras voces a traducir, a repetir lo que estaban diciendo en español o a repetir lo que estaban diciendo en inglés y traducirlo al idioma contrario. Fue terrible porque fue poner nosotros mismos en los pies de esas personas. Utilizar la primera persona singular. Yo fui detenido, yo fui llevado a tal parte, yo estaba haciendo una huelga de hambre y me llevaron a otro lugar y en el camino me tocaron y en el camino me hicieron otras cosas y me pusieron un tubo en la boca para obligarme a comer. Fue muy tocante, fue un momento verdadero de crucifixión. Pude sentir el dolor de esa persona en ese momento y en algún momento de traducción tuve que decir, no puedo más ofrecer mi voz, no puedo ser yo, sino tengo que ser él que está diciendo que, porque el dolor era tanto que yo no podía ya seguir asumiendo eso como si yo fuera yo mismo el que lo estuviera viviendo. Fue un momento de crucifixión bastante fuerte. Pero también hubo momentos de resurrección a lo largo de todo el camino de la Pascua, del camino de la Pascua. Y para mí hubo muchos. Por ejemplo, cuando estuvimos el primer día de camino, cuando nos encontramos en aquel lago que se estaba volviendo a llenar después de que el agua fue vendida a Los Ángeles. Fue un momento de resurrección a nivel ecoambiental. Pero también la historia de este chico que descubrió después de muchos años que él no era mexicano, sino que era un nativo americano y que pudo volver a ser quien él era, porque no le permitían ser, no reconoció sus orígenes. Fue muy bonito. And finally, I will say that another big experience of resurrection for his diocese was the Camino itself. Because Bishop David always share the same history. The history of the diocese happened because we were divided. We were in different places with no connection with the national church, with the Episcopal Church at large, and no connection between us. So having people of different congregations joining us all the way in other communities, knowing other Episcopalians in other small towns, was very important. It was a moment of resurrection, because resurrection is about that, connecting people with God, connecting one people to one person to each other. So that's the resurrection. And I think it was a really important experience of resurrection for the diocese, El Camino de la Pascua.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that you mentioned, the day of McFarland was one that we should never, ever, ever forget. And that indelible image, as you described, of you and Tony and hearing the voice of 3 different detainees coming through the phone and translations in that moment in time. And you'd remember so well, you two, it was almost 2 hours out there. It was a really hot day. We were gravitating towards a singular tree to provide some shade. And yet hearing the stories of these 3 people, the slight inconvenience of what we were experiencing so pales into any comparison to what they had experienced. The horrific treatment behind those fences and behind those walls is a story of crucifixion that has to be told. And we have to figure that out, how we respond.
Well, and what makes McFarland even more heartbreaking is when you set the detention center in its context, because right next to it is a public park, which is right next to a public school. And you get this sense of like, this is a warning that if you step outside the lines, you too could end up back here. And it was heartbreaking.
Indeed it was.
And for me, as I repeated a lot of times, it's McFarland. I'm watching McFarland on perspective of future. And because we visited the relocation center for Japanese people during the Second World War. And I was hearing this narrative about, we are really sorry, it was our mistake. No one of them were found guilty of betraying the US or helping the Japanese government. It was our mistake, we're really sorry. I'm wondering if maybe in 30, 40 years, we will do the same things with the detention centers of ICE. Saying, we are really sorry, it was our mistake.
Indeed. Yeah, that's the reckoning work, isn't it? So everybody, thanks for listening. I will put pinch the cannon's thunder at the end of each day. She would eloquently make a plug for what she would call swag, what I will call memorabilia. These are things that are still available on our website, so we encourage you to continue to purchase those. It benefits those that were the beneficiaries of this Camino. And then lastly from us, this Camino didn't simply stop with this month of May. It must continue. Our reckoning work, our acknowledgement of places of crucifixion, and our ongoing work and desperate need to create more places of resurrection must continue. And so we bring that to you. We will be writing about this. We'll be talking more about it. And we ask that you watch this. En el nombre del Padre, el Hijo y el Espíritu Santo. Amen.